What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the RePHIL studio. It's your host, SB4. Let's refill to 99 as we always do for our next set, because we have our next set of special guests here joining the studio today. Our first double special guest feature of this new year. I'm glad to have zippyzap as well as Star joining us for the RePHIL studio today. Zippy, as a brief introduction, has multiple podium titles, as well as very recently first place in the Terrible Horror Night event. And Star, a familiar face, has been on the RePHIL studio before. He's gotten, as a reminder, T10 on the Happy New Year's event last year. So both of you, thank you so much for taking the time to join the studio today.
Thanks for inviting me, Phil.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be back.
Anything else you two would like to add on to the intro, or everything is good to go?
I think we're good.
That's
okay,
fine.
Great. So, usually when the guests come over and talk about our wonderful topics of Bang Dream, I'm always curious to know, how our guests first got into the game. Star, we've already talked about that briefly in your episode previously. So maybe Zippy, we could talk a little bit more about how did you first get into Bandori, and, how did you first started getting into the series?
Yeah, sure. I've been a fan of rhythm games for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Played Project Diva and even things like Guitar Hero growing up. So really, I got into Bang Dream by just looking on the App Store for rhythm games, and about 3 years ago now, downloaded it. And 3 years later, we've sunk how much time and whatever into it, but it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely. Rhythm games are always very once you kind of get into one, it's really easy to get into another. So, definitely understandable. Star, I think you also were a similar sort of background, right? In terms of, first getting into Bandori, if I recall from our previous conversation. You also had a little bit of experience with rhythm games, right?
Yeah, I didn't have a super extensive experience or anything, but I'd played a few games on DS especially, and so it was definitely somewhat familiar, but it was the first one I really got into more intensively.
Okay, great. Well, Zippy, what about when you first got into the series? Did you have like a favorite character, favorite band, and did that change throughout the time?
I would say my first favorite character for Bang Dream would be Arisa. I've always been an advocate for Twin Tails, though. So my favorite characters are like Arisa, Akko. I don't know who else actually of the Twin Tails specifically, but Hagumi, Kokoro, Roka. That's sort of what it's developed into over the years.
Yeah.
I'd say.
Well, that's really interesting. I you're definitely not one of the only guests. I think a lot of guests so far have really mentioned that Aris is one of their favorite characters. One of your very close friends, Soren, as well, who was recently featured in the the studio, also mentioned that. So it's pretty interesting how all the connections kind of build together. But Zippy as well. When you got into Bang Dream, it's not only just the characters, but then eventually got into tiering. So how did that first start? Like, when did you decide, I'm so passionate about this game that I want to tier for a particular character or a band?
Sure. So I played very casually for my first year. I mean, maybe I had a handful of top 10,000 titles. Got a top 1,000 in the Summer Roselia event that year, which I thought I had played pretty hard for at the time, right? I was really proud of that one, which, it is exciting when you start climbing up in your titles. But New Year's event with Kasumi and Aya, I decided, what the heck? I'm going to see how much I can play and how high I can go. And I got top 100. And since then, it was like, I just was like, that's it. I want to try to go for T10 on something. And I actually found it pretty difficult back then to try to get into the tiering community. I was around PubCord, but I didn't really have a lot of friends that played the game. So I I was trying to find people who, would be familiar with tiering communities, because I was like, I don't know how you get into these tiering servers. And I think I in Pubcord, I was like, oh yeah, like, is there a server for this event? But it always felt like people were very, it was more of a private thing for tiering servers. I don't know if that's changed so much. I think it has, but at least back then, that's what it felt like to me. I ended up, my first T10 was Message for You, the Popipa event. And I ended up tiering that event just on a whim. It's the sort of thing where you look at what the event is, Happy Popipa, and then you go, oh shoot, I have the team. I have the resources. What the heck? Let's just see what happens. And in the end, we made it to top 10. But not without me not understanding how tiering servers work and how that whole system works. And I'm not sure if you know Pills, but Pills stream. Well, I don't know if he still does, but he used to stream his Popipa tierings.
Oh, okay.
I actually showed up to his Twitch channel. I was like, oh gosh, you guys have a room? Like, I could totally join. And they're like, no, you really shouldn't join. And I was like, what the heck? I don't understand. But now I totally get it, right? The pub showing up to your stream. Anyway, it's funny to think about now, but it was tricky for me to get into the whole tiering scene. But after I had that T10, I've been in for that.
Oh, wow. So, it quite an adventure to go from, starting to get like the 100, right, for the first, the Ayakasu event. And then kind of slowly building and trying to gain that confidence to tier. And at first it was kind of difficult to get into the community, which is definitely understandable. It's not the easiest at times. To find your ways or find your ways through and joining various servers. But again, that's really, really cool that you were able to kind of on a whim try to get like a T10, and you were able to get that quite smoothly. So yeah, that was a very interesting sort of new, fresh experience with tiering. Going back to Star, switching over to Star, like did you also kind of find similar sentiments when you first joined the community, and like, did you find it very difficult at first, and what did you also do instead to kind of adapt around that?
Yeah, so it was a little different for me. As I mentioned last time when I was on, my sister Michaela actually introduced me to Bandori. So she kind of gave me that little entrance into the tiering community.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and when we were talking about, because she had already started doing some tiering and getting a little more into it, she was kind of encouraging me to try doing something like that for myself. And so she said, there's this event that looks like you've got a decent team for, and I know you mentioned you like the banner for it, so I can send you the invite to that, and we'll see how it goes for you, and you can get into more service from there.
Yeah, it's really strange that it ends up kind of feeling like real life networking, where like, the way that you can kind of get in and really settle yourself and then be able to set yourself up for success for future tiering is like, it's kind of like a business almost. Like you just go in and find networks, and you have connections. Some people have connections right off the bat. Others, you got to find your ways to build it. But, once you build that network, it really becomes a lot easier to grow it. So it's really, really interesting how the two different sides of getting into tiering community kind of overlap, which is really nice. Now, of course, both of you have actually something in common, which is an event that you actually tiered together, which was the Happy New Year's event. Zippy, I believe you were podium on there. I think it was second or third, one of those two. Yeah, and then Star, you were T10, right?
Yes.
So how did that event, like maybe let's kind of take a step back memory lane and maybe recall some of the experiences you had with tiering that particular event. So first of all, I guess, how did you two end up wanting to achieve these particular titles? Like why is it that you wanted to tier this event, and what happened throughout the event? And either of you could start.
Ooh, who's starting? Me?
You can if you want.
Oh, okay, sure. It's an Aqua banner. I no, Akko did not have a banner from New Year's until Terrible Horror Night. So I kept saying, I was like, after New Year's, the next time there's an Akko banner, I want to go for T1. And it didn't happen for a year, which is not unreasonable, of course, for Karuta fans. But even so, I was like, I want to do the Akko banner. So just did podium. So that's why I did that event. It's also just a super cute event in general.
And Star, I think you mentioned about like, going for that event as well. But I imagine like, you had your own kind of motivations as well for that event.
Yeah. So I was looking, the original reason I thought about it as a possible tiering option is I was looking for events that I would already have a decent team for and wouldn't have to pull too much. Yeah. And so I saw this event and thought, all right, well, I've got a pretty decent team going here. This seems like something I could probably pull off. But also, I mean, the event members are just some of my favorites. There's Akko, Sayo, Arisa are a few of my top ones. So it was kind of just meant to be.
Yeah, that's definitely very, very interesting. Again, the fact that the roster all comes together, you have a roster for a particular event, and Zippy, I'm sure you were, part of trying to build the roster and also, first get your foot in and try to get that slot. So how did that conversation go, trying to get that podium slot on the roster?
That's a very good question. I'd have to think about it. Pastry was T1. I had tiered with Pastry before as Pastry tiered the Karuta event. I don't remember the actual name of it. Just remember by Karuta.
Yeah.
But I had done T10 for that, and I can't remember if when the banner. I really can't remember if like when the banner had released, if I had approached Pastry about it, or maybe I don't know. I can't remember if he had known that I would be interested in an event like that or not.
But it just kind of.
I think I might have just like stuck my foot in the door the second it showed up. It's like, hey, I'd really be interested in this.
Okay. And then of course I imagine then you were trying to help build the roster, see how the roster was built. So when you saw people like in the top 10, like for instance, Star being added to the roster, what was your impression on that? Like what was your impression on the roster throughout the event?
I think it was a pretty strong roster. I feel like every event I tier, I always end up meeting people in tiers that I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm not super active in the tiering servers. Besides events I'm going to tier, which is bad on me. I should spend more time helping the people who've helped me. But I think I met Poi Poo during that event. I tiered a Star, even though previously known Star because he was a mod during the Christmas Hello Happy World event recently before then. I think, right? I'm not wrong there.
Yes, I was. Yeah.
Okay. I thought so. But yeah, I thought it was a solid roster.
Yeah. That's good. And what about you, Star? What did you think about the? We talked about your T10 experience overall in our episode, in our last episode, but maybe about the roster. What did you feel about the roster overall? Right? About people like Zippy, and Poi Poo, Pastry, all that.
Yeah. So I'm going to be honest, I was kind of intimidated at first. It was my first event. I was really going for something high. I'd done one T100 before and some song tier here and there, but it was all T100 song titles. I hadn't really been active in tiering servers for my own goals as much. And so, I mean, I knew Pastry as the person who got the weekly T1. I knew Caster because I had gone for top 1000 in Rosalia versus Afterglow, and I remembered seeing Caster on the leaderboard and considering, oh, this was a really hard event just for me to get top 1000. It must have been crazy to get third place. So I was kind of intimidated, and seeing how much drive everyone had, I was like, all right, I got to do my best too. I got to hold my own and make sure the roster does well as a group. And everyone was just so nice. I had a bunch of questions the whole time. It was my first time hearing like that. And everyone was just super friendly, answered my questions. They were really nice. It was great. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely. That's great to hear. And again, for Sarah, was like one of your first tiering experiences in general. Zippy, I think that was also your first podium, if I'm not mistaken. Or did you do?
That was my last podium before the T1.
Okay.
My first podium was June Bride, which it was an experience that is not typical to tiering experiences this time. I pubbed most of that.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that it really shows what you can do with just a couple people in a versus live, that's for sure. And then I had Autumn Heartfelt Letter.
Autumnal Heartfelt Letter. Yep.
Yes. Yep. Those were the two before then.
Well, so at that point you were already very well experienced. So that podium in Happy New Year's wasn't like necessarily that much different, or maybe like something that's you haven't really seen before. Comparing your podiums, did you find like any of them to be particularly challenging? Or I mean, obviously the Flower Bride, I imagine that'd be very difficult.
Well, June Bride was less taxing for me at that point in the year. I actually I wasn't working then. I hadn't got my job yet. So I had a lot of time to myself. But the issue with deciding last minute that you want to try to tier something is for June Bride, I think it was like 2 a.m. the night after the event started. The night the event started, I pulled Kasumi during the first hand roll, and I was like, shoot, now I have the team. I should try to. I wanted to help Homie out too in Pubcord, so I roomed for a while, and then it ended up being the T1 runner Mako and I stuck it out there, and it was the two of us mainly, and then we had probably a filler or two, and that's how the event went until I think we were finally invited to the server, Salt Best server, the last couple days, just because things had sort of settled by then, and it was like I think there was a chaser of some sort that we were trying to watch out for, but that was probably the most difficult. Well, yeah, podium experience. The play itself in tiering, I never think is the worst part.
Yeah.
It's the stress comes from other things you're tiering, I think.
Your time management, how other people are doing, and how much resources you might have versus them, right? So
everything like that.
Yeah, that's definitely understandable. So, but regardless, it's really nice to hear about all of your podium achievements, Zippy, and of course being able to tier with a bunch of familiar faces, old and new, in the Happy New Year's event. Do either of you have like a particular maybe memory or of that particular event that was like really notable, or was it overall just like generally pretty chill for that Happy New Year's event?
I've got a couple.
Oh, yeah?
The most notable one being that I repeatedly would, anytime I took a break, I would say, all right, I've got this much extra for gotchas. I'm going to do one 10 pull now, I'll do one here and there. Everything planned out. I ended up pulling around 30,000 stars worth and didn't get Akko. This happened again on this event as well, Terrible Horror Night. And it has become a running joke that Akko hates me. So despite me tiering her events, which is now 2 out of my 3 top 100 and above have been Akko banners. I don't have a single Akko 4-star in my 2.5 years of playing. So that's one of the things that I remember joking about a bunch. But I think a really just like nice memory I had was, it was the first night and it was about like 4 a.m. and there were just a few of us sitting in VC while G1 kept going. And it was just like talking to each other, getting to know each other, really quiet and calm and peaceful. And despite it being 4 a.m. and all of us being exhausted already, it was just so nice to be able to talk to each other, and it was really, really cool.
Oh, definitely. Just the bonding experience of tiering really makes it, right? No one's actually sold on tiering to spend hours and hours playing Unite for Me 2Z over and over again. It's really the experience of being able to, interact with people, do it with other people, and get to know each other, and of course do it for a particular passion, whether it's for a particular character like Akko or just for other motivations. So, yeah. Zippy, anything else to add?
I feel like my primary memories of New Year's was that it was the first event I had actually taken the whole event period. I had taken time off from work.
Oh,
Said that's
wow.
it. I'm gonna go in on this, and then it ended up being, I think, the most casual of all of my events thus far. So it was I took all the time off, and I didn't really need to, which that's what I remember the most.
But hey, chill podium events are totally fine. You'll take those, right?
Oh, yeah. As chill as a podium can be, I suppose.
Yeah.
If you really think about it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, great. Well, again, it's great to see that, it's really interesting that, especially for you, Zippy, the progression of all your really big tiering achievements, like, oh, you did a tiering event for a Ayakasu Happy New Year's event. Then 1 year later, there's this Akko Happy New Year's event. And then because of the Bandori scheduling during the New Year this year, you also did another event. So it's very interesting. It all kind of like ends up being at this like particular time that you sort of increase your status as a tier, and you get even more achievements. So we'll talk about Terrible Horror Night very shortly, but I do want to put a bit of context as to like how that tiering sort of planning all started. And again, it all boils back down to none other than the House of Wales. So, I think either of you could hop on in and maybe share, but maybe Star might have a bit more experience on this. But, we talked a little bit about House of Wales before, but elaborate a little bit more on House of Wales and how has it grown since the last time we talked about it?
Yeah. You want me to, Zippy?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So, House of Wales was originally Nova's server for tiering Lost Toy. Mm-hmm. And when Terrible Horror Night dropped, it was very shortly after Lost Toy finished, if I'm right on that timeline. And I think it was. And I remember at first, Nova and I wanted to tier it as podium together, but we very, very quickly found out, and this was like right after the banner dropped, that Zippy wanted to tier it. And we're like, all right, well, Zippy deserves the title for this because Zippy's the Akko fan. Mm-hmm. So we're going to see if we can get on Zippy's podium together. And eventually both of us did drop, but it was all of us, we made a little group chat. We're like, Zippy, we want to tier this with you. We see that you want to tier it. Can we join you? Can we be on your roster? And Zippy's like, yeah, I've got a server already set up if you guys want to join. And Nova goes, well, Lost Toy server still exists. Why don't we just use that? There's plenty of people in it already. We can just reuse it for the event. And so we ended up migrating to there and just saying we were going to reuse it for Terrible Horror Night. But then as the year went on, both Zippy and Nova started seeing more events that they wanted to tier because they're both whales. I'm sorry. I love you. I take all the affection in my heart. But they both just saw, oh, there's this one. I want to tier this one. We decided to put Einsatz in there as well for Nova. And then Little Rose Harmony, Morphonica Bandstory 2, Harmony and Change. We just kept adding different events and realized we can't just list all of the names of the events because after 2, it starts to get to a really long server name. So we just said, all right, it's going to be the House of Wales because, I mean, we've got these 2 people going for all these events. Kind of whale. I ended up dropping my podium goal originally, swapping to T10, and then during the event I dropped just to T100, but I handle a lot of the moderation stuff and server upkeep. And then Zippy and Nova are the two whales whom the house belongs to.
And Zippy, when you first joined the Lost Toy server, would you even imagine or dare imagine that it ended up growing to such a community and such a big sort of place for all these events to happen and be hosted?
I don't think it's too far of a stretch. I know from when that all happened very quickly, of course, that we decided we're going to reuse Lost Toy. It's kind of controversial. Some people are against the idea of reusing a tiering server, right? I suppose it's a concept of building up your own server, not even to the point where like having a channel dedicated to tiering servers could also be seen as something that's lower effort, right? What you would want to build a group of people who you have a connection with, and if you're going to ask them for their support, then it'd be better to reach out and do it yourself, kind of deal. So I kind of heard when we decided to join servers like some flack on that, but I think House of Whales has really turned into a nice hub, I'd say, because it's sort of changed into not just this, that, or the other thing, but watching how how it goes over the year, right? It's difficult to plan for tiering, especially when you set up a server and do all of this work a year in advance. I think it's difficult to really say, yeah, in a year I will definitely be able to put the time toward this and all of that stuff. But it's been nice to see how it continues to be used and grown. And I think the issue of I think, although I'm not too sure on this, but the argument that having an established server for events would sort of make it difficult for people who are not in this community, who are not a part of this group of whales and tiers, to say, yeah, I would want to aim for that event as well. I don't think there's any intent to dissuade potential competition or anything like that. And I don't know if that's happened as a result, but it'd be interesting to see going forward.
That's a very fascinating debate. I didn't realize that was actually something that was maybe potentially argued about, and maybe there's a side on which is better. That's actually very, very, very unique. I never even thought about that personally. So that's pretty interesting side of things of tiering servers. I have to think about some parts of it in my personal opinion, but maybe listeners as well could share their opinions on that as well. But yeah, it's very, very interesting how it ended up all kind of coming together, building a hub. And again, I think the last time we talked about House of Whales, I think it was just after Lost Toy, and then like it was prepare for Terrible Horror Night, and then I think an event after. But I think since then it has probably like tripled in events.
Yeah, so when you and I talked, we had Einsatz and we had Terrible Horror Night planned, and then we added, I believe, 3 more events since. And go ahead.
Sorry, I opened up House of Whales to take a look and see, and there's currently 4 upcoming events. There's 4, yeah, used for. So that's status right now.
Yeah,
it's really cool, honestly. Like Zippy said, we've gotten some flack from people saying, well, you shouldn't reuse it, but if anything, to me at least, I think it makes it a little more welcoming that you don't have to join all of these servers. There's this one where you're going to see some familiar faces. You recognize who's going for the podium titles, and it just feels a little bit more relaxed because we're all just hanging out. We play Karuta. We just hit 300 members during Terrible Horror Night, which is really incredible. And I mean, honestly, I'm glad we're keeping it going because it's just become a nice little place.
Yeah. And I can't forget the people who like recently got into House of Wales, I think for the Terrible Horror Night event. And they're coming in, they're like, oh, I'm coming in because I want to tear for this event. And then they're saying, oh, after this event, I now have a crippling addiction to Karuta.
That's the struggle. We work for Craig, the
Sorry.
owner of
Hook,
Karuta.
line, and sinker.
Yeah, Karuta, again, for those who are not too familiar with it, I believe it's sort of like a kind of like a trading card kind of thing of sorts, where you're trying to collect trading cards and such, and building that deck and such. Yeah.
Well, there's no deck building to it. It's really just collecting cards. It's a Discord bot.
It's a gotcha game if you really think about it.
Yeah. If you ever played around with Muday or any of those sorts of Discord bots, it's along those vein of, like every 15 minutes you're gonna drop or something. But it's addicting, and I would not recommend. Just save yourself. Save yourselves.
You would not recommend it, and yet it's like, oh well, at the same time, the House of Wales welcomes you if you want to become a Karuta addict. So
we run Karuta competitions during the event, so if you drop the rarest card, you get Nova will send you a prize. And so we can't personally, as myself and Zippy, encourage you because it can be addicting. But if you want to join, you might win a prize.
Oh, yeah. And just to further not sell this, I actually won the first competition during Mindset. I have this sweet Toko, key strap. So don't play Karuta. Definitely not worth your time.
Oh my god, I can't believe it's so funny how like the tiering experience really has grown, right? The fact that you're coming together and you just want to tier for a particular event, and then suddenly it's like, oh well, oops, I have this addiction for this gacha game Karuta with this Discord bot. And then like you'll probably talk about this a little bit later during your T1 adventure, Zippy, which we'll talk about very shortly. But like you're like doing stuff like watching all these movies and like a lot of these other weird stuff and very interesting kind of shows that you watch, right? What is it, Twilight? I think was a part of it in there too.
Yes. That was our marathon. Yep.
So before we talk about your T1 real quick, Zippy, I'll just briefly mention for the listeners, House of Wales is now going to be the tiering server for the following events: the Analysis of Harmony and Change, the Little Rose Harmony event, the Morphonica Band Story 2, Fly with the Night, as well as the How My Heart Sings Poppin' Party event. So if you're interested in any of these events, join the House of Wales, but be warned of Karuta shenanigans. So
you can always message me on Discord for the invite link. My Discord username is star with a capital S, hashtag 0064. Yeah. I will hook you up.
Great. Hey guys, it's Phil here. Hope you're enjoying the episode so far. Just want to give a few announcements. First of all, a reminder that the RePHIL Studio podcast is now on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. So definitely check them out, give them a listen, give them a rating, spread the word. All your support by listening to the podcast is greatly appreciated. If you really like the RePHIL Studio and would like to support my content, feel free to join the Filler Nation by either subscribing to my Twitch below or by joining my Patreon, which is very flexible. There's a lot of sort of tiers that you could support me. Any support is greatly appreciated. And once again, thank you all so much for listening to the RePHIL Studio. Another thing is we have a new YouTube channel that will hopefully feature a new sister project to the RePHIL Studio podcast, as well as other fun Twitch streams and highlights. So check the card above if you would like to subscribe to it. It's only a click away. And lastly, feel free to join the Anga Academy Discord server where our podcasts are recorded live. You can also interact with special guests featured in the podcast, as well as contribute to the studio question that is discussed every podcast episode. Thank you all so much for your attention. Let's head back to the episode. Let's talk about Terrible Horror Night. We haven't had the chance to actually talk about the event specifically. Zippy, you already mentioned why you wanted to tier for it and how you sort of prepared for it. But maybe take a step back memory lane to talk a little bit more about, what was it like to prepare for it, right? Your feelings going into this T1, and then
boy.
how that happened.
Well, it's been a long journey. It was super exciting, a year ago when the banner dropped. I think I got pinged 3 or 4 times. Like, there's an Akko banner. go get it, kind of deal. But with the way that Bandori has been recently, I didn't know if this event was going to happen around Thanksgiving or if it was going to happen last week, like it did.
Yeah.
But I work full time, and having to try to plan to take time off to tier, to go to attempt a T1 has kind of been the worst part of it, for sure. The most stressful, because it was getting to the point where we had just run what's it called? The Toko Ron event was run around Thanksgiving. We still hadn't had the collab Bandori 3s. I'm like, we're up next. It's just a question of whether or not Bandori is gonna have things ready and change the timeline here, or what we're looking at. So I feel like for about a month or so, I was basically just waiting at any time to be given the news that we were going to need to tier in a week or less. So that, I think, has been the most stressful part of the T1. The event itself was amazing. The roster, everyone worked so hard, and it was really nice. It's probably the best experience I've had tiering, but definitely Bandori did not do many favors here.
The stressful part, like especially with a lot of the recent T1 havers I've been having on the studio, a lot of it really wasn't the stress wasn't necessarily actually the event itself. It's just the fact that you never know when suddenly you're summoned, be like, okay, I guess we're tiering now. So that part was absolutely crazy. And again, the hope is that the Bandori gets back to business and follows the schedule as they claim they don't follow, but it's how it is. But again, the event overall, I think for you, I think it was very, very meaningful, especially when this was your very first T1. For some context, I know in the beginning, everyone had like Project Sekai characters in their names and hearing as Project Sekai, and it was pretty funny there.
That was actually just I had mentioned, because when we did New Year's, I also mentioned this. I said, does anyone want to match names or anything, or do any matching profile art? Because I think it's really fun when you're tiering. Mm-hmm. And we had a couple ideas, and Zippy goes, my name is Emu right now. I'm not changing it. And I said, all right, then let's all be Sekai characters. It was pretty easy.
That was a easy way to connect everyone together. Yeah.
Yeah. So, no, I'm a huge Emu fan.
Yes.
You're the Emu fan.
You are the Emu fan. Yes. I think like what we associate Akko, associate Emu is like literally, yep, that's
exactly.
Zippy. Yeah, exactly. So it's pretty.
I'm happy to hear that. That's what I strive to be.
Yeah, it's trying to strive to be. Yep. T1, like again, like I also heard again, you were it was really, again, T1s are usually a really fun experience because not only you're putting a lot of hours, it's a lot of effort, playing A to Z over and over again, or in recent cases, save your song if you're really good at the game. Sure, save your song over and over again. Not the the easiest thing to do, but so it's kind of sort of kill the time by watching a whole bunch of movies, whole bunch of do other things in chat, right? Talk with other people. Well, so throughout the whole event, Zippy, what other than your tiering accomplishment, what other accomplishments you had in terms of the entertainment department of what kind of shows you ended up finishing.
Oh, the entertainment department. Let's see. Well, we ended up watching Twilight, the whole saga, which of course Netflix took off. They got rid of Twilight, like I
Unfortunate.
think it was the 15th or something. So we ended up watching Twilight, and then we went back to watch the rest of them, and they were gone. So shout out to Transients for paying $10 to get a subscription so that we could watch the rest of the Twilight saga. But that was the main accomplishment there.
Oh, that's
in
good.
terms of series completion, I'd say. But we watched some SpongeBob, some other things, and I think it's a lot easier to pass the time when you're just relaxing and all hanging out watching something that you enjoy watching together.
I was gonna say Twilight is like relatively fitting for the theme of the event, and then SpongeBob, not so much, but still, it's fun. It's really interesting to see like how a lot of people spend time there tearing, because a lot of people have all these like horror stories of like getting like hallucinations or stuff while tearing, but like you avoid that by having some entertainment on the side. So. Yeah.
Well, you also avoid that by not being awake for more than 40 hours at a time.
Yeah.
Which, I've been there. I did that
no.
I did it for June Bride because I didn't plan on tearing the event. So, by the time I'd started, I was already up for like 20 hours. So that's the only time I've experienced that, because the rest of them I've been like, that's not worth it. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Is what someone said to me during Terrible Horror Night. I appreciated that. It's good to remember.
Yeah, for sure. Star, you want to add anything to that?
I remember we originally discussed the idea of, and this was back when we first, like the first few weeks after we had put the event in what is now House of Wales and Zippy had declared her intent to T1, we were talking about, let's get a list of horror movies to watch during the event. And I remember Zippy saying that she doesn't really like horror movies. And I'm glad that they ended up finding something in the middle, because Twilight isn't exactly a horror movie, but it's got those aspects of traditional horror with the types of species of characters and everything. So it kind of worked out.
Sorry, go on.
No, I'm done. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Every time I look back at House of Wales and I see the channel that's like, name some of your favorite horror movies, I was like, man, I forgot we were going to do something like that. But I'm really not a big horror fan, so
you're not out of the woods yet. Nova and I still get to bully you into watching some movies.
Okay, I accept that. But I was not hosting a horror night.
Yeah.
Although I guess that would have been fun, right? To see me just in absolute pain, tearing and watching horror movies, which I'm not a fan of.
Well, maybe A to Z will distract you from all the jump scares or anything. Who knows?
Yeah. My best friend A to Z.
Yeah, when no one got your back, at least my best friend A to Z got your back. So I'm not a huge fan. I'm not a huge fan of horror personally myself. So. Yeah, I'd rather avoid. If I was given that option, I'd probably avoid horror too.
Of the three of us, Nova's definitely the horror fan. Nova
for sure.
Like, die-hard horror fan. But I like some classic horror movies. I'm not as much a fan of new ones. I think, for me at least, it's like, I like the suspense. I don't like jump scares. I don't like excessive gore. So old horror movies like the original Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, that's my kind of stuff. And I wanted to show Zippy that because it's more just spooky. It's not scary. But I don't know. Nova's probably going to force us to watch something if they're involved. So we'll have to see how it goes.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. Nova, you're quite something when it comes to horror movie stuff. So we'll see how what they do and what they plan out. But yeah. So again, Zippy, big congrats on your T1 on Terrible Horror Night. You are officially queen as the second ever T1 haver in 2022. So that's always really nice to have. And that also kind of leads to a very interesting question, because I remember seeing this on Twitter, and it's from someone that we are all very familiar with. So I actually just want to like maybe bounce this idea off of the two of you as well. Our favorite whale, Pastry, has posted a question claiming that the hot take was T10s are easier than T100s.
T100s. I agree.
You agree?
I actually agree with that too.
Yeah. Okay. Elaborate a little bit more on that. If everyone agrees, that's not really a hot take anymore, eh? So either of you could elaborate.
Okay. I think motivation wise, that's the main draw there. A T100, if you're aiming T10 podium, anything like that, you know how much you have to play. You're in for a fight kind of deal. A T100 and now T50s are a thing as well. A T100 is, I've always found it to be, you play a set or two, you get in there, and then it's, you drop back. But it's not as urgent as a T10 of like, if you see people playing against you, like, I have to get back in here, I have to play. With a T100, it's like, oh, I could do that later kind of deal. And it just ends up being a race against the cutoff. And it certainly, I think, is I don't know, less fun. less fun than a T10, but also cheaper for sure.
Yeah, it is cheaper. T100s are certainly cheaper
and easier to obtain.
Yeah, but it's a very interesting kind of logic where like, sorry, you could maybe add on this if you agree or not, but like it's interesting because with T10s, obviously there's less spots, but maybe there's also just because there's less competition, right? Like in theory, like less people are like fighting for those spots, or maybe it's already kind of set in stone. Whereas like maybe like the general kind of public or general kind of perception, a lot of people are kind of thinking about top 100, even though there are more spots in top 100, more people are also competing for it. So perhaps that also makes it, a little bit more competitive than what people may initially assume.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. For me, I think Zippy touched on this. With T10, you really know what you're in for. You're going to be playing X amount. You can figure, all right, this is going to be around T10s for this type of event have been around this range. I know that there's this many servers for it. I can assume it'll be competitive, or if it's not competitive, I can kind of estimate this is how much I need to play and how much I need to spend. With top 100, it's really hit or miss. It might be really woke. It might be really dead. There's not really any way to tell unless it starts, or like until it starts. And you kind of have to just keep moving real slow once you get that initial 1 or 2 sets or however much, and then just keep going a little bit and move back in, and you drop back out. You got to get back in, and you got to figure out, all right, well, I'm at 60th right now, but there's this much time left in the event, and I know that it's already pretty expensive. Do I want to keep going? There's so many unknown factors. Whereas with top 10, it's a lot more cut and dry. Even if it just costs more, it's a lot more straightforward.
So in short, if you are a whale and you have the resources and you're like, I'll spend more resources, but if it gets me a top 10, overall it's going to be pretty chill and or at least relatively more chill. Whereas I think that's one key point. There's a lot more uncertainty with the T50 cutoffs and T100 cutoffs. You don't know exactly how everyone's against each other. Where T10, it's a lot easier to sort of gauge that information. Like it's crazy. Like when I was attempting my first T10, I didn't realize that there were like stuff like spreadsheets that people track on like hourly basis on like how everyone's doing. And it's like, whoa, like people have this knowledge and information in like the behind the scenes stuff. So there's a lot of resources to help you for T10 where there isn't as much. You basically at least a bot on your back for T100 and that's about it. So, it's a pretty fair argument. So, but I don't know what you guys, again, for those our listeners, either on YouTube or on Spotify or all of our platforms, you can share your thoughts as well. What you think about, the T10 versus T100, difficulty argument. And maybe for those who are struggling with T100s, perhaps the solution is not go for T100 and go for T10. Right? That sounds simple enough, right?
Just spend more money on the game. It makes it easier.
Oh boy. Yeah. But anyway, again, thank you two for sharing your experiences, and I'll give you the opportunity near the end to just talk about what your future tiering events are, and we've already talked quite a bit about it already, but just elaborate near the end. Before we do that, I just want to elaborate on very quickly a studio question that I asked our server members in the Unga Academy. Every week I ask a question for people to answer, and we discuss on it in the podcast. And the question I asked the members this week was, you could create any event of your choice featuring any 5 Bandori characters as featured characters, and what would be your dream Bandori event? So maybe we'll start with Zippy. If you could choose any 5 characters and build that as your dream event, and would influence or will influence you to go for another T1, what would it be?
I would say what is it called? The where they do the band mix-ups and then you vote for your favorite band, and why we have all those nice 2 stars of Akko and the others. The one that won, which I remember being referred to as Arisa's Hell Band. I think it's like Kokoro, Hagumi, Akko, Arisa, and Hina. That's it. Just a bunch of super energetic characters, and then the straight man and Arisa would have her hands full for sure.
I'm actually surprised that that hasn't been a thing where these election bands are not actually haven't had an event together. That would be so interesting. Actually, I never thought about that.
Yeah,
that would be. So. That would be very, very interesting. That would be a very, very cool event. So, maybe Bushiroad is listening. Maybe they'll give that to you, and then you'll get whale fluenced again.
If you're listening, you want to make a quick buck, Bushiroad? That's your in.
She's already funding you guys enough. Make it more.
I'm in.
Oh boy. Star, what about you? What is your answer to that question?
Ooh, probably something like I'm predictable, so Arisa and Sayo. And then I'm going to go with Yukina, maybe Kasumi, and Hagumi. Something just relaxed, fun, kind of like how Autumn Heartfelt Letter was more focused on goofing off a bit, but also trying to get the 2 more stoic characters of Sayo and Yukina to relax some and just enjoy having fun. I like that sort of event. So I think that would be really fun.
Yeah. Basically, it almost sounds like an Autumn Heartfelt Letter sequel in a sense, but yeah, that would be very, very interesting. I know, for those listening, right now, there are sort of sequel events in a sense. There's the Phantom Thief sequel event that's happening in JP Dori. So that's maybe sequel of events will happen in the future. So. Yeah, and the Discord has shared a lot of possible ideas, and I'll be sharing them on the video above as well, so you could have a look and maybe contribute to these ideas as well. All of these ideas have been pretty interesting. Personally, if I were to actually have maybe not necessarily a dream event, the most dream event, but I think one event would be very interesting would be having all the third years in one event together, in particularly in the school that Poppin' Party is in. So the third years would be Sayo, Chisato, Aya, Rinko, and Kanon. Maybe have an event of them. Maybe Bushiroad, if they could graduate them, that'd be really cool, and have that as a graduation event. But I don't think Bushiroad's graduating them anytime soon.
I think they said that they weren't going to, but I think having some sort of event with the 5 of them related to something school, if they're putting on a celebration, that sounds like it would be adorable.
It would, yeah. But yeah, I think in the past they might have briefly hinted that maybe the Bandori characters will actually age, but we all kind of figured that wouldn't be the case, unfortunately.
I think it's been a slow progression.
Yeah. I'm still waiting for the sudden change, and we have instead of Akko, we have Taco, tall Akko. I'm still waiting for that character progression.
I mean, have you seen the event card from Warmth in My Heart?
Yes.
That Akko card always looks a bit odd to me. Her body is so long. I'm like, is she this tall? That's odd. So I'm just saying, I think tall Akko is out there.
Taco maybe soon. Taco soon. But honestly, Zippy and Star, thank you so much for taking the time to join the studio today. Before we wrap up, maybe just give a few shout outs on maybe some future events that the two of you will be planning to tier. Maybe, we'll start with one of you guys. Maybe start with Star. Has your future tiering plans changed since the last time we spoke?
Yeah, let's start with me. Mine's going to be shorter. I'm not as whale. I don't really have anything planned for right now, actually. I'm going to see how high I can song tier this event right now. I want to get something good on Sweet Span because I almost have pre-gacha optimal. Almost. I'm missing the right costume, but I have one that's pretty close. I'm going to be song tiering here and there. I might pick up a top 100 somewhere. If you want to fund me for a top 10, just DM me. I don't really have plans right now, but we'll see where it goes. Maybe I will randomly pick something up and make poor life choices. Yeah.
Well, all the best, Star. Hopefully, again, maybe you'll add some whale plans in the future for you. And Zippy, what about yourself? Anything more to add to your already big collection of titles?
So not retiring yet. I am aiming for another T1 in Little Rose Harmony upcoming this year. The Akko, Roka, Mashiro, Rui, and Choo-Choo event, mixed event. I'm super excited. It's a great cast of characters, and that's really all I have for tiering plans. I've thrown in the towel. I'm not doing a T10 every other month. But hopefully picking up a T50 or T100 along the way here, see how it goes. But I'm not retiring. I don't want to ever say I'm retiring. I still enjoy this game.
Yeah. And ultimately, people who say they retire, it's sort of like a phase. You retire and then you retire. But
Exactly. Your first retirement, and then there's your second retirement, and then there's your real retirement.
Yeah, but also again, the T50s and such, those are new, so that's always like really interesting and really exciting to see sort of a new level of competition in the game. So those T50 titles are definitely going to be quite interesting to obtain. But all the best to both of you and your respective tiering achievements. And of course, if any listeners want to help support our guests here in their tiering achievements in the future, contact information, the Twitter handles and all that are all on the description below, as well as on the video. So feel free to give them a shout out. I'm sure they'll be very happy to gather support. And of course, if you want to tier the same event as them, might as well join the wagon and help join and support each other, and maybe get a tripling Karuta addiction at the end as well. So
just a side effect.
Yeah, it's a slight small side effect when tiering sometimes.
Small side effect of tiering.
Yeah. But again, thank you two so much for joining the studio today. Any last words or last shout outs before we go?
Just
join the House of Whales.
And just thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, a great pleasure to have both of you on today as our double special feature guest of the podcast of the RePHIL studio. So again, everyone, thank you so much for listening. This is your host, SB Philos 4. The set has been complete. We will get our cans ready and refill for the next set with our next special guests in the future. But until then, thank you all so much for listening. And remember to check us out on all platforms that you listen to your podcast: YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. But until then, everyone, Take care. We'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.